So who am I? You know, my given name is Jonathan Baldwin. Um, my parents still haven't necessarily come to the conclusion that they're Africans in America. Uh, they have identified as African American, slash black. They do not reject being Africans of African descent in America. So I never had any of that put into my head of a type of indoctrination as a child. This video is just an introduction to kind of where I'm at, how I got here, which is I believe I'm an African in America and not really an African American, right? To be American, to me, it means that you'd have to have not just ties to the country America, but you'd have to have some sort of the citizenship. It can't just be like a citizenship where it just says that you're a citizen. It's got to feel like you're a citizen. And I don't see that for the black community in America. As much as we've contributed and as much as we've protested and have, jumped up and down about things that affect the whole community and likewise affect technically all of America, right? I don't feel that we have become American enough. Even with all the loss of culture, there's still plenty of in your face everyday proof that America does not really want us to be American citizens, like equal American citizens, which is what matters, and so can't deny that I'm African. I personally have gone through every single phase of identity in researching and looking at it to see how much validity it has. I've started with the NOI. Yeah. I listened a little bit of Minister Farrakhan. When I was growing up, I grew up Christian. Parents is heavily Christian. I wasn't religious myself. My parents were religious. They go to church. They pay their tithes. They pay their taxes. They do all that. Me, even if I went to church, I would never pay any kind of tithe out of my own pocket. From my understanding, churches are a nonprofit. They really should have, I don't even know, but they shouldn't be paying property tax after they pay off their building. They should be able to hold the land indefinitely, even though there's separation of church and state. You're paying the electric bills or water bill. I also never understood why, if we're the church, why we go to church. We should just be hanging out with our neighbors and spreading love, if that was the case. But that's not really how church goes. Everyone pretty much goes their separate ways after church. You hang out every once in a while, but it's not really. It's not as communal an organization as it once was, right? And the NOI, I feel like, is also kind of the same type of thing. I looked into the NOI through the identity crisis. I'm hearing what Mr. Farrakhan's saying. He's like, black people are the chosen people. Bring out scriptures, and you look at the scriptures, it kind of does make sense that we could be the chosen people. If there's any people that describes it, that is descriptive of in the Bible, right? That has to be us. Went through slavery on slave ships, nobody but us. And all those type of facts that if you even looked at it, and even if you're not religious, right? If you took it and let's say that it was in a book, like if you look in a history book, right? All these things that happened in the Bible, you're gonna see that that type of prophecy type stuff happened to us. You're gonna look into history books in America, and you're gonna see black people were taken on ships from Africa to the Americas, right? And you're gonna see that it wasn't even just Americas. The Bible says to the four corners of the earth, so that means east, west, north, south. There's black people that are taken from East Africa to America. There's black people taken from East Africa even into Asia and Arabia, right? And there's even black people that were trafficked through the Sahara from West Africa to the east, into Asia and into Arabia, right? So to me, all of that made sense for a long time, and I don't have any issues with anybody that thinks that way. I went listen to Farrakhan. I still appreciate the fire that is in his speeches a lot of times. Then I started looking into Moors and the Moors that were in America, Moorish Americans, and being above American law and being kind of like they say indigenous, to the point where that you don't necessarily even have to follow American law because you'd have your own jurisdiction. And that to me seemed appealing as well. It's like firstly, as a different set of people with a specific circumstance of why and how we got here, we shouldn't necessarily have to be following, their laws, right? It should have our own set of laws for ourselves that we police ourselves. In my head, that's how I think. We should be able to police ourselves and correct our own community, for certain things, right? And that's because we specifically got here, most of us, right, through ways of being forced here, right? It wasn't like we chose to come, right? And that had some validity, right? And there's still evidence that there's black people that came from Africa to the Americas, right, before Columbus. But that wasn't most of the population that was here. It wasn't Africans that came before Columbus living in America, right? So then I get into Hebrew Israelitism, the Hebrew Israelite movement, all of that, and there's something that like was. I used to listen to this guy's G-Dash the Prophet. I don't even know if his channel is still up right now. But he had a lot of stuff. He's like showing Hollywood's connections to, knowing that black people were the chosen people. And, they put it in your face every movie they put it out. And they had like, they show you all these folks that are like joke about it. And they kind of joke about it in a way where it seems like they know that we're technically the only people that the Bible could be, talking about. And for a while that all made sense, and it still might make some sense. But at the end of the day, I've come back to the conclusion that I'm an African, and there's nothing wrong with being African. And in fact, it's probably the best thing that could ever have happened to me, is being born an African, regardless of where I was in America, Caribbean, South America, Africa, in the continent, in Arabia, Australia. To be African, to be a black-skinned person is a blessing, and I will never take that for granted, right? We have a long history of greatness, and it really doesn't matter what greatness means to anybody else, right? We have all kinds of greatness, like greatness in every sector, from music and arts to physical greatness, and champions of different sports. We had our own sports even before there was the Olympics, right? We had great civilizations that were building things that still baffle folks to this day. Um, with high society and culture, our own writing systems and plural systems over many millennia, right? And we had our own style of war. Even like we weren't even we can't even say that we were always peaceful people. We're mostly peaceful people, right? But we still even had war ourselves, and we had tacticians, right? We had our own Genghis Khans and Sun Tzu's who had their own philosophies on war and peace and prosperity. We had our own economies. We had our own uh, wealthy individuals and kingdoms. We had our own mining, uh, minting, smelting stuff down, iron making, steel, uh, woodworking, all levels of society, until it was interrupted for colonization and slavery, right? And, that is where we need to get back to, and being on a production level and being well known for our production and for it to be unapologetically African is my opinion. Like I see a lot of things where we're building now, but we haven't gone back, right? We haven't had our Sankofa moment of going back to, you know, the things that we used to do and just updating it for the current, you know. And yeah, that's mostly who I am right now. Like I'm an African, and I have no problems with being an African. I'm proudly an African, and yeah, I kind of don't want to end it here. I had something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, for the Africans that know they're African but still think they're Hebrew Israelites, like I understand where you're at, but at the same time, I don't think it's not the final stop on the bus. If you get me, it's just to be African. That right there is where your ticket was supposed to be. You stamped at, right? That's the final destination, right? And to appreciate being African and not having to have a book that was written by somebody else, even if it was from our own documents. Like we haven't seen those original documents, right? So we don't really need that to be, content with being ourselves. Like we shouldn't need it. And there's also like, minor things like honoring your ancestors, right? Like regardless of how you do it, it should be done, right? But there's folks that'll be like, your ancestors are evil, they're demon worshippers, regardless of it, whether they're Christian or Hebrew Israelite. And then you go to the Bible and you'll see that even Jesus, right, went up on a mountain and he was praying with, he had a moment with Elijah and Moses, right? And those were technically his ancestors, right? People that had a significant place in the history of the people in the book, right? Ancestors. And had other folks in Africa who were in the Hebrew Israelite type of movement that I've learned some stuff from that bring out these kind of points that like there's a lot of us that will read the Bible from a colonized mindset, and we still would want to like the things that the people things that your enemy really doesn't want you to know. They say that they put it in a book, and then the second part to it is they put it in a book, but they also will make you think that the things that are supposed to be good for you, things that are naturally for you, the things that naturally is supposed to help us, help guide us through, right? Then demonize it, right? That's the second part. Is that the things that are good. It even says in the Bible that folks call it good evil and evil good, right? So there's the folks that want to be like the ancestors. That's necrophilia. You after you're dead, you're dead. There's nothing else after that, you know. And then there's scientific folks that on the other side that'll be like, matter is not created nor destroyed. But at the same time, there's no afterlife. You can't come back. There's no reincarnation, and I can't necessarily say that there is, but I can't rule it out either. Also where I'm at. So there's a lot of stuff. It's just a learning experience. As long as you're on Earth, my grandma used to say, her grandmother told her, or her father told her, right, is that what you put in your head, no man could take from you. And I'm sorry to be this dry and boring. I meant to put some jokes in here and let, have some light in the mood. But just want to let y'all know who I am, right? So I'm an African that knows they're of Mende and Igbo descent minimally. And I don't doubt that I have many, many other ethnic groups from the continent that are also running through my veins. And those ancestors are also hoping that I get the chance to visit their land and indulge in the culture that's there and help build in those societies too. Learn, give and learn, and never stop learning. And I think that's the most of what I was trying to get at with this particular video. So with that, everybody take it easy. Y'all get to know me a lot more if I keep posting.